POW Pledge comes to you from Protect Our Winters UK. Protect Our Winters UK inspires and equips UK-based outdoor communities to take positive action to address the climate crisis, accelerate the transition to a carbon-neutral society. My name's Don Winter, and with me is Adam Hall, who's going to take you through the POW Pledge today, your guide to climate action.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Dom. Yes, so the POW Pledge. What is the POW Pledge? The POW Pledge is our reaction to a gap. We found that there's a lot of organisations out there that want to take positive action on climate, and there isn't an organisation or a guide or a best practice policy to guide those SMEs in particular through that process. We have a lot of supporters, and we encourage you to come and support us as well to do other work on climate. And a lot of those supporters were consistently asking us, but what can we do? What more can we do to tackle the climate crisis? And instead of giving sporadic advice all the time, we decided to have a nice formalized pledge system that takes you through 8 of the most impactful steps you can take. The pledge is designed around action, not paperwork. It's designed to invoke action from any organisation and to let you know what are the most impactful things you can do. There are bigger schemes which we introduce you to that you can get involved with, but they're generally around larger organisations that have a lot of resources to cover those. And there are some smaller schemes which are very, very, very lightweight, and they don't really hold a great deal of water. Very good to be involved with. But actually the POW Pledge does give you a really good, a really stringent guide on how to go through things. All the pledge does in return is to your commitment on dates as to when you'll achieve those eight points. So what will you achieve by taking the POW Pledge? Well, first and foremost, you'll achieve some knowledge and some guidance as to what you can actually do. Secondly, it can inform your policy, your climate policies. Thirdly, you'll be supporting us to do other work to go and influence policy and influence our community to take action as well. So there's lots of benefits to the pledge, but first and foremost, it's the guide. It's there to help you. So let's get stuck in. I'll show you each of the 8 pledges, and we'll quickly rattle through each of those. So if I just share my screen. So this is the pledge landing page. As you will see when you first arrive, there's a video in there which I will encourage you to all take a look at, and that just puts a frame of why we need to act and why we're so powerful as an outdoor industry. If we can come together and actually take action that the pledge actually tells you how to do, we can make some serious impact. So there's a bit of information on there that just gives you an idea of what's coming up. And then all you do is just click the link here, make the pledge. And there's a quick registration form with all your details, simple. And that will take you straight through to the pledge itself. Now, once you're in here, all this information is free for you to use. We do ask for a donation if you do want to go ahead and take the pledge, a privately listed pledge. If you do want to go ahead and take a publicly listed pledge, then there's a slightly higher fee with all the marketing assets, but we'll come to that a bit later on. So I'll just quickly show you through them. So there's 8 pledges. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8. So it's really straightforward. It doesn't take you long at all. There will be some additional information that you might have to pick at, so you might not be able to achieve it first time around, but you can save it and come back to it as many times as you need to. Pledge number 1. How is or will climate breakdown affect your organisation, and what actions are you taking to adapt to these impacts? So this isn't asking you what you are doing to reduce your impact. It's asking you what you are doing as a business to adapt to climate change. So the first question, these are free form boxes. There's no right or wrong answer here. Just put in what you feel. And it's just switching our brains on to the whole situation and the whole crisis. How will climate breakdown affect your business? There's lots of different ways that it might be affecting your business. It might be increasing your trade. It might be decreasing your trade. You might have to change your business to adapt to the different temperatures or weather conditions. And that's exactly what the next one's about. What plans are your organization making to adapt to climate change. So what are you doing to adapt to it all? As I said, they're free-form boxes, so there's no right or wrong answer. But this is where the real power of the pledge is this how and why button. This really explains all the different details on why we should be going through these motions. There's a step-by-step guide in most of these. There's lots of useful links with the latest information and websites. Everything you're ever going to need. There's more support here. You can get hold of us if you have any technical issues with the pledge, but actually, more importantly, there's a 20-minute free consultation with a sustainability consultancy firm, Green Element. So my advice is, as you go through the pledge, make a list of all your questions and use that 20 minutes wisely. So that's pledge number 1, super easy, nice free form box. Yep, that's it for me on pledge 1.
Yeah, so a classic example would be for a business that is a tour operator, and they might need to be aware of the fact that any ski resort under 1,200 meters is likely to not have snow in the near future. So you would look at which resorts you run holidays to and which sorts of holidays you run as well. You could run maybe mountain bike holidays as well as ski holidays, for example. Pledge
number 2, again, this one's very easy. Set a target date for all your electricity to be 100% renewable. Something that we should all be doing. So there's a couple of boxes here that are optional, and then one that's compulsory. If you can fill in this data, then that's great. It's really useful for us because it's, as a charity, it shows how effective we are at influencing change. So the first question here is average total kilowatt hours per year for electricity. That's optional for SMEs. If you're a larger organization, you should know that. The total percentage of kilowatt hours from renewable source, if known, again, that's optional, but if your renewable part of your electricity contract is 50% renewable, 20% renewable, then please put that in there. And then the final part, which is compulsory, which is super easy, is set a target date for your electricity to be 100% renewable. Now, I've set a relatively, well, that's a date in the past. That's when perhaps you might have achieved it. If you've already on 100% renewable electricity, you put a date in the past. But if you do put a date that's way out there, it's not going to be accepted by the system. Now, electricity contracts are generally no longer than 5 years. So actually, if you put a date that's beyond 5 years, then it's not ambitious enough. That means your next contract term, you're not going to revert to renewable electricity. You know, that's not good enough. We need to, in our next contract term, revert to renewable electricity. If you do put that in there, then this red box comes up if it's not ambitious enough, and then you can only take the private pledge. You can't take a publicly listed pledge if you opt for that. As you go along, you can save for later. So you can actually save at any point and come back to the pledge. But again, the real power is around the how button. And that gives you a step-by-step guide of actually how to revert to 100% renewable electricity. You've got the guide to renewable electricity hierarchy, so you can understand which electricity contracts are better than others. And there's all sorts of links to switching tools here with all the latest information about who's good and who you should revert to. So this is where the real power of the pledge is, because it tells you how to do exactly what you need to do. So that's pledge number 2.
So as it says in the how and in the further guidance on the third question, if you don't have any direct energy use, it's based on your operational energy use. If you don't have direct use of electricity, then just enter 0 usage and enter today's date. And you are in fact pledging that if you start having a renewable electricity contract, you will use a renewable electricity contract.
Brilliant. So pledge number 3. Now this is around heat. So that can be heating for your buildings, for your radiators, keep you warm, or process heat. So if you actually are manufacturing using a process heat. So set a date for building heating and process manufacturing heat to use renewable energy. And that's either air source, ground source, heat pumps, biomass, 100% biogas, rather than fossil fuels. Again, if you don't have buildings, if you don't use anything other than electricity, then you can simply put 0, and you can bypass this question. However, if you do, and you run multiple buildings, then please put in the different types of heating you have for each building. Perhaps there might be something slightly different. And then optional again, if you could put in some kilowatt hours of how much you use in a year. Again, that helps us because that shows how effective we are as a charity. And then once again, it's really simple. You head down to the bottom. Oh, there's another question there. So you can actually put in your current renewable heating types if you already do have renewable heating. This is your opportunity to actually put out to claim what you already have. And then again, just set your target date for what date you're going to revert to renewable heating fuels. And again, we've set boundaries on there. So if you're not ambitious enough, the orange box will come up. And if you choose to stay with that date, then you can only take the privately listed pledge. Save for later again if you need to. And once again, the how button is full of everything you need, a step-by-step guide to prioritize what type of heating source you should go for going forwards. So that's step number 3, pledge number 3. Okay, so moving on to pledge number 4. This is all around your vehicles. Set a target date for your vehicle fleet to be 0 emissions. That's either electric or hydrogen powered. Now, straight away, some of you might not have any company-owned vehicles. So this is only vehicles that are owned by the company. This is not private vehicles, staff vehicles that are used and their mileage is claimed. Although we do refer to that a little bit later on as well. If you don't have any vehicles in that fleet, just put 0, and then that's it. You can leave that question. You can also put in here, how will you encourage third-party vehicles to become zero emissions? So that is your staff's own vehicles that claim mileage back. How are you going to encourage them to use 0 emission vehicles? How are you going to encourage your freight forwarders to use 0 emissions? That's a free form box. However, if you do have vehicles, say you've got 3, for example, how many vehicles will you transition to 0 emissions? If you put 2, and if it's not the whole fleet, then you just need to explain why. If this is not the whole fleet, please explain why you have not reverted them all across. And that might be something to do with the fact that there's not many options for heavy goods vehicles, for example. And then you simply put a date that you're going to transition. Simple as that. And then that final question about how will you encourage third-party vehicles is still there as well. So that's really simple. Once again, the how button is really useful. Step by step, plenty of links, and all the latest information about the electric vehicle market and hydrogen market. So that's pledge 4. So moving on to pledge 5. This is where it gets a little bit more complex. Those first 4 pledges are very simplistic. This is where you really need to start thinking about your broader CO2 emissions. But it's something that we all need to do. We've all got to start doing this with government legislation coming in and government setting net zero targets. We've all got to start thinking about this at some point or other. And the pledge is your platform, if you like, to start. So pledge 5, identify key causes of greenhouse gas emissions currently unavoidable to your business and plan to reduce them. So really simple. To start with, we want you to identify what those large causes of greenhouse gases are that you can't currently unavoid. And then just how can you begin to think about reducing them? So first of all, you select all the elements that are relevant to you. So that could be business travel, freight, product footprint, supplier buildings, supplier operations, customer travel, customer activities, or there might be another one that you want to just type in there. So begin to highlight those ones you want to focus on initially. You don't have to highlight all of those. You can choose the ones that you want to. And then as time goes on, you can look at more and more. This is a free form box and it's optional for you to put in. Outline how you will measure the greenhouse gas from those activities. Are you going to run your own spreadsheet? Have you got a software application that you're going to invest in and work with? You're going to have a third-party audit perhaps. Next one, current estimate greenhouse gas emissions for that year for that activity. So if you've already started going down that route and actually, you know what, we've figured out how much CO2 our business travel is, just pop it in there. If you don't, no problem. But again, that helps us when we're gathering data and information to show how effective we are as a charity. Moving on, do you already have a plan for reducing these greenhouse gas emissions? Yes or no? Pretty simple. If you put yes, how do you intend to reduce these emissions? So if you've got a plan, it might be that you are going to reduce business travel. You're going to say to staff that you must use the train as much as possible. So whatever, that's a free form box. If you've got plans already in place, put it in there. If you don't, you simply put a date that when you will have plans to reduce those emissions. So super simple. Then the last one, we don't want to concentrate too much on offsetting because that's not the answer. It does help with the historical emissions, but actually we need to reduce. That's the real work. So are you intending to offset in the meantime? No, then you do it like that. With yes, there's a few more questions. The method of offset you're going to use, and that can be the organization that you're working with, whether that's tree planting, whether you're using gold standard offsets, whatever that you're choosing to do, just a free form box. The date the offsetting will be achieved, and any other details you have about offsetting. You might have a specific plan around that. There we go. And once again, this is one of the more complex of them all. So there's a lot of details here in the how button. All the steps that you need to go through, some specific advice around what the sector that you might be in, and again, all the links you could ever wish for and all the details you could ever wish for. So there we go. That's pledge 5.
Yeah, and I'd really like to emphasize to dig into that how and identify which are likely to be your highest key causes of greenhouse gas emissions. We don't want organizations looking at their canteen if they manufacture 4x4s. It's not their tangible causes. So it's really important to identify that high cause that you should be focusing on.
Right, so on to pledge 6. So we've looked at trying to reduce carbon emissions and offsetting if you have to. But this is the real work. You know, we've all got to reach net zero. Governments are setting targets to reach net zero. You sure bet that businesses have to get there before that date. So this is something that we have to work on. And again, this is a guide as to how to do it. So what are your net zero goals? The first question, which categories of emissions will your net zero goal cover? So we're not asking you to say, you can do if you want to, but we're not asking you right now to cover your whole business, because the definitions around net zero is a moving playing field at the moment. It's not set out and defined. So there's a lot of flexibility within this question. So don't panic about it. It's just about getting you to think about what you can do and beginning to set those targets. That's what we want to achieve here. So to start with, you can select purchase goods and services, capital goods, fuel and energy related activities, upstream transportation and distribution, waste generated in operations, business travel, employee commuting, upstream leased assets, downstream transportation and distribution, and the list goes on. So you can choose which ones that you want to actually work with. There's another question here which is optional. So if you have any interim targets between now and net zero, for example, 50% reduction by 2030, that's a really common target that we're finding. If you've got anything specific that you're working to before you get to that net zero, there's an opportunity for you to outline it there. That's optional. And then the date that you want to achieve net zero. As the governments, local governments to us in the British Isles and across Europe, they're setting targets around 2040. It's important that you have it way before 2040. Otherwise, you're going to be seriously catching up. So that's quite straightforward. Again, this is really key with this pledge, is the how button, because this is a moving playing field and the definitions are changing rapidly. We keep it all up to date, and there's lots of data in there, lots of links to keep you fully up to date on the latest. So that's pledge 6.
So one thing that's key with net zero, as opposed to, you might have heard of carbon neutral, net zero typically now doesn't include offsets. So you can't offset and allow yourself to claim that as a net zero. So no acceptance of offsets in here. So we'd suggest you don't choose a date too soon. This needs to be quite robust. While you can choose your own boundary, you can't use offsets, and it will be difficult for you to control certain things outside your own footprint. So you might not be able to choose a date within the next few years, and that's fine. This is the long-term ambition.
Fantastic. So this is where we really begin to speed up. We've got the last two pledges. And this is perhaps the most powerful thing that you can do as an organization, Pledge 7. So begin your divestment journey, removing financial ties with the fossil fuel industry. Your pensions, your bank, your insurance, your money is more than likely being invested in fossil fuels, which is insane. So you're saving for your own pension or your staff's pension for their future, and actually that money is going to deplete their future. So that's something that we need to change. So we need to begin to divest from the fossil fuel industry. Now, we've got two options here because we appreciate it's quite difficult to find the exact product that you need with a bank that might not be invested in fossil fuels, you know. So it's a difficult process switching bank accounts for organizations. It's perhaps something that we need to do, but there's two options here. So there's a bit of a get out of jail free card here with you can simply send a request for a statement on fossil fuel investment to each of your financial organizations. Now, if you choose that, then all you have to do is put the date that you're going to send an email to your bank, your insurance, and your pensions. We've got a templated letter for you email, which you can literally just copy and paste. So it's all set up for you, exactly what you need to ask. What that does is it sends a series of yellow cards out to the financial sector to say, look, there's a lot of organizations out there that are concerned about this. And then what that can do for us as a spin-off activation for Protect Our Winters is we can actually write an open letter to the financial sector to say there's 1,000 businesses here that have said they want these financial services that aren't linked with fossil fuels. Who's going to offer this product? However, if you really do want to go for it, you can do both, or you can just go straight in and move your finances to a share action approved provider. And then you simply set that date that you're going to achieve that. Now, Share Action are a great organization and they partnered with us on this pledge. And they've given us lots of guides here for your banks, for your insurances, and for your investments. Now, this is updated regularly by them, and it will give you advice about the financial institutions that you should be involved with from a climate perspective. And there's lots of other campaigns that you can be involved with, like Make My Money Matter. It's a bit of a mouthful. So there we go. So that's where the power of that one is. And then there's one final question. Target date for total of divestment. So at some point you might want to put that's optional. At some point you might want to put in there that you're just going to completely cut ties with the fossil fuel industry. To set that date, it's really nice to set targets. So there we go. That's pledge 7. And here we go for the last one. It's as I said, this very simple, the pledge system. It's all about that how and why. So we're at the final one already. Pledge 8, request consistent suppliers over 10% of expenditure take the POW pledge. So essentially what we're doing here is we're trying to spread the word of the pledge to your suppliers, to trying to get more and more organizations to take action on climate change. Now, why is this important to you? Well, actually, it's a good screening process. If you really want to start working with more sustainable organizations or suppliers, then actually you can use this as a tool to verify whether you should work with one organization or another, or whether you should renew a contract. Have you taken the POW pledge? Right, brilliant. You're the kind of organization that we want to work with. And it's really simple. Number of suppliers, 10 maybe. And then you literally just put the date that you're going to ask them to take the POW pledge. You only ask them, it's not a stipulation from us to say they have to take it, but we've got a templated email that you can just literally copy and paste and off it goes. Really simple. And that's all included in the how and the why buttons. So that's really easy to finish with. Then you just go on to your final thoughts. I mean, if there's anything else you want to tell us, any extra work that you're doing, anything fantastic that we need to shout about when we call you out on social media for taking the pledge, pop it in there, let us know. You can save for later if there's a few there that you want to go back on that you want to check. But if you're confident and you've done it, you've got all the data that you need, you submit the pledge. Once you've submitted the pledge, you've got a couple of different options. You can either go through a private pledge where we ask for a minimum of £100 or pay what you think. And that means that your details aren't listed and you essentially go as private. We obviously get to claim that there's another company that's taken the pledge, which is fantastic. And then we can report on that wider carbon emissions that we've influenced to reduce. However, if you really want to go for it, which we encourage you to do, you take the publicly listed pledge. If you do that, you get listed on our website, you get called out on social media, you get a whole smorgasbord of marketing assets to dress your email signature, to go on social media, to be a sting on the end of your videos. The list goes on, and it really helps spread the word that this is what we should be doing, and it gives you the recognition that you need for the commitments that you've made. So there's a couple of different options, and if you go for the publicly listed pledge, then it's priced depending on the number of employees that you have. Just to show you what publicly listed pledges look like on our website, here's a couple that have taken the pledge already, and it just tells you what their commitments are. Which is fantastic for you because it's publicly listed. Your customers can see it, your clients can see it, your other businesses can see it, and actually this can inform your policy. This is your climate policy. This is a framework for your climate policy, which is done, which we all need to do. So yeah, there we go. That's the POW Pledge. Obviously, it's the time for action is now. The pledge is there to help guide you through that, and we hope you find it useful. And of course, any questions and you're still unsure about anything, then please do get hold of us. It's something that we can more than often answer straight away. So thanks for listening.